Assalamualaikum and a very good day to my lecturer and my fellow friends. Today, my group and I will present our chemical exposure monitoring for total dust airborne total particulate in Kilang Papan, Liu Sdn Bhd in Gambang. Our group consists of 4 people, which is me, Kamila Izayani, Nurin Alwani, Aina Ashik, and also Ahmad Zahidi. As an introduction, what is airborne particulate? Airborne particulate is a compact mixture of a solid and aerosol composed of small droplet of liquid, dry solid fragment, and solid core with a liquid containing. And this TSP contains solid liquid airborne particles with a diameter that is less than 100 micrometer. So basically, the dust around us and the contaminant around us can be called airborne particulate. And the high exposure level of airborne total particulate can lead to various health problems such as cardiovascular problem, respiratory issues, and even cancer. For our group project work assessment, we choose Kilang Papan Liu Sdn Bhd that is located in Lebuh Raya Tun Abdul Razak, Gambang, Pahang to do our chemical exposure monitoring for total dust airborne total particulate TSP. The working hour of this factory or company is from Monday to Friday, which is the usual weekdays from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. with 2 hours break that is divided into 30 minutes in the morning, 1 hour for lunch, and another 30 minutes in the evening. The date of our air monitoring is on 29 May 2024. The method that we use for our CEM monitoring is NMAM NIOSH Manual Analytical Method 0500, and the legal requirement for this company is OSH 1994, FMA 1967, and also use Regulation 2000 because there's a particle which is dust in the workplace. The objective of our work assessment monitoring is first to identify the source of airborne exposure that can become the hazard to the worker at the workplace, which is the dust or the contaminant from the wood that a worker worked with, and then to evaluate the level of airborne contamination in the workplace that is faced by the worker that may be hazardous to workers' health, safety, and general productivity. The third one is to determine the measure that can be taken by the worker to prevent the risk in the future, which is their worker safety, their worker health problem in the future. And the fourth one to analyze the hazard and risk that can happen at the workplace due to the exposure to airborne total particulate. And the last objective of this assessment monitoring is to assess the effect and consequences of chemical airborne exposure on the company worker.
Alright, next we move to the methodology which we use RAC, which is anticipation, recognition, evaluation, and control. So first for the anticipation, what is anticipation? It is actually to predict and identify the potential sources of airborne particulate exposure in the workplace. So there is 3 anticipation, which is the first one is industry knowledge. It is for understanding the sources of TSP such as sewing, sanding, finishing process. And the second one is process analysis, which is for review the sawmill operations to anticipate the risk. And the last one is for the historical data. It is to analyze the past records and to identify potential issues. For recognition, what is recognition? Recognition is this phase is actually to identify and document specific areas, tasks, and process that contribute to airborne particulate exposure. And there is 4 recognition that we can get from this assessment, which is the first one is workplace survey. It is to conduct a comprehensive survey of the company to identify areas with visible dust and particulate sources. Second one is employee interviews. We interview the employees and it is engaged with focus to understand their perceptions of dust levels and identify tasks they believe to be high risk. And number 3 is visual inspections, which is for perform regular visual inspections to recognize areas where dust accumulation is evident. And the last one is preliminary sampling, which conduct initial air sampling to establish baseline levels of TSP in various work areas. Okay, next for evaluation. Evaluation is to measure and assess the concentration of TSP to determine the extent of worker exposure. So there is 4 that we can evaluate, which is first one is personal monitoring. It is used personal sampling pumps to collect airborne particulates from workers' breathing zone during their shift. So we need to ensure the pumps are calibrated and the filter are appropriate for TSP. And second one for area monitoring, which is deploy stationary air samplers in key areas to monitor background particulate levels. And number 3 is the sampling protocols. So we need to follow established protocols, for example like OSHA, NIOSH, for sampling duration, frequency and analysis. The last one is data analysis. For data analysis, we need to compare measure concentrations with occupational exposure limits, which is OEL, set by regulatory bodies such as OSHA and ACGIH. The last one is control. For control, this phase is to reduce and control worker exposure to airborne particulates. So there is 4 controls that we can get. First one is engineering controls, administrative controls, PPE and health surveillance. So for engineering controls, there is 2, which is dust separation and enclosures. So for dust separation, use water sprays or missing system to reduce airborne dust. And enclosures, we can enclose dust generating process to prevent particulate dispersion. And next one, for the administrative control, there is 3, which is work practice, job rotation and training. For work practice, we can modify work practice to minimize dust generation. For job rotation, we can rotate the workers to limit their time spent in high exposure areas. And last one, for the training, we can conduct regular training sessions on dust hazards proper, which use PPE, and best practice for dust control. Okay, number 3 is personal protective equipment, which is PPE. So for this PPE, the employer can provide workers with appropriate respirators, for example like N95 masks, and ensure proper fit and usage. And for the protective clothing, the employer can supply and enforce the use of protective clothing to prevent dust from setting on workers' clothes and being transported to clean areas. And the last one is for health surveillance, which is medical monitoring and health education. Medical monitoring, they can implement regular health checkups and respiratory function tests for workers. And for health education, maybe employer can do a seminar like to educate workers on the health risk of dust exposure and encourage reporting of the symptoms.
And then for the findings, the activities at the wood industry is logging, milling and furniture manufacturing. And then for total dust at the wood industry is all airborne particles from wood processing, which can cause respiratory issues. And then next, airborne total particulate, which is TSP, is inhalable suspended particles that can lead to respiratory conditions like asthma and bronchitis. And then the importance of monitoring is health and safety compliance, risk mitigation and worker health. So for health and safety compliance, it can ensure adherence to OSH regulations. And then the second one, for risk mitigation, is identify high risk areas to reduce dust exposure. And then next one is worker health, which is it can protect workers, enhancing morale, reducing absenteeism and promoting long-term health.
Alright, next we go to the calibration data. Okay, during our assessment, we are using only the one pump only, and we goes the flow rate by the 1.2 liter per minute. And after we have done our assessment, we did the post sampling calibration flow rate, and we get the 1.238. For the average flow rate, we get the 1.219 for the both flow rate. And then I will show you the result that we have gathered at the assessment site. As you can see, we are using the 4 filter paper, which is the filter paper number 4 is a blank, and the total sample time that we have did at the website is 110 minutes, which is the 1 hour and 50 minutes. And the blank filter paper, we just open a few seconds to get the sample for the blank. So the volume sample we get 134.09 meter per square, and the concentration particulate for the dust is 0.002237.
Okay, and then next one is discussion. So for discussion, we are sampling technique. We are using the personal device to collect air sample for 6 hours, and then real-time monitoring. We continuously measuring particulate levels with immediate data feedback, and then for data analysis, we utilizing software to analyze data, identify trends, and assess risk. And then last one for control measures, there are 3, which is engineering controls, administrative control, and PPE. So for engineering controls, installing ventilation, dust collection systems and barriers. And then the second one, administrative controls, which is developing policies and schedules to reduce exposure. And then for PPE, the workers need to use PPE for providing respirators and protective clothing.
Lastly, to conclude, it is essential to identify areas with particulate exposures exceeding safe levels. We also need to ensure compliance with occupational health regulations. Employees also need to educate employees on healthy practices to reduce the risk of disorders that related. And lastly, we need to regularly review and update assessment to adapt to changing conditions and emerging researches. So that's all from us. Thank you.